When my daughter begged me not to send her back to school, I thought she was just nervous about exams. I didn't realize she was warning me about a tragedy that never should have happened, one that would change both of our lives forever. Looking back now, I can't believe how safe everything felt. That's the cruelest part of it all. How ordinary those days seemed, how much trust we placed in the routines that eventually betrayed us. My name is Daniel, and my daughter, Emily, was the center of my world. She was 12 years old, with a messy ponytail that never quite stayed in place and a laugh that could cut through even my darkest moods. Every morning, she sat at the kitchen counter with a bowl of cereal balanced in one hand and her homework in the other, scribbling down last-minute answers before the school bus arrived. "Dad," she'd say, grinning at me with milk on her lip, "don't worry, I've got this." And I believed her. I believed in her school, too. Ridgeway Middle School had always been painted as the pride of our little town, a place where teachers knew every child's name, where the PDA organized carnivals, and where the principal liked to remind parents that their doors were always open. It was the kind of place where bulletin boards overflowed with colorful drawings, and the biggest scandal was when the vending machine broke during finals week. To me, Ridgeway was safe. Normal. A rock in Emily's life when so much else had already been unstable. Her mother had left when she was just 7, too overwhelmed to handle the responsibility of raising a child. Since then, it had been Emily and me, our little team of 2. And Ridgeway became more than just a school, it was a second home for Emily. She adored her English teacher, Ms. Carter, who encouraged her writing. She played clarinet in the school band, her cheeks puffing out comically as she tried to keep up with the older kids. I used to stand at the doorway during concerts, my chest swelling with pride. She looked so small among the sea of musicians, but she never faltered. At home, Emily would chatter endlessly about her day, how her best friend, Lily, traded her half a sandwich for a cookie, or how Mr. Thompson's history lesson turned into a goofy tangent about pirates. I'd listen with a smile, thinking, this is what childhood should be. Ordinary. Happy. But beneath the surface, there were cracks I didn't want to see. The first time Emily complained about Ridgeway, I brushed it off. "Dad," she whispered one evening, "I don't like walking past the east hallway after lunch. It feels wrong." "Wrong how?" I asked, distracted as I folded laundry. "I don't know. Some kids hang out there. They just stare." I sighed, assuming it was middle school drama. "It's fine, Em. Ignore them. You'll be okay." She nodded, but I caught the flicker of unease in her eyes. I told myself she was just sensitive, that all kids had moments like that. Later, she begged me not to make her join the after-school tutoring program. "Please, Dad. Don't make me stay late." "But Em, you said you needed help in math," I replied, confused. "I'll figure it out. Just don't make me stay." I should have pressed her. I should have asked why. But instead, I chalked it up to stubbornness. Emily was independent, after all. She didn't like being forced into things. And Ridgeway was safe. That's what everyone said. That's what I believed. Even when she started waking up with dark circles under her eyes, insisting she had nightmares about something happening at school, I told her it was stress. Exams were coming. She'd be fine. The truth is, I wanted to believe the illusion. I wanted to believe that the world I was sending my daughter into every morning was exactly as it seemed. Bright classrooms, friendly teachers, a playground filled with laughter. I wanted to believe that Ridgeway was everything its glossy brochures promised. But safety, I would learn, is sometimes just a story adults tell themselves so they can sleep at night. Because all the while I packed Emily's lunch and waved goodbye at the bus stop, something darker was building inside those school walls. Something no one wanted to acknowledge. Something that, one day, would explode. And when it did, it would shatter everything. The first warning bell should have been impossible to ignore. But like most parents clinging to the idea of safety, I convinced myself it was nothing. It happened one Monday morning in early spring. Emily slid into the passenger seat, unusually quiet. Normally, she filled the drive to school with chatter. What Lily had texted her, what she hoped was for lunch, how she wanted to audition for the spring talent show. That morning, she just stared out the window, chewing her lip until it was raw. "What's up, kiddo?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. She hesitated, then whispered, "I don't want to go today." I frowned. "Because of a test?" "No. Because of him." "Who's him?" She shook her head quickly, retreating into silence. I pressed, but she wouldn't elaborate. Finally, she muttered, "It doesn't matter. You won't believe me anyway." The words stung, though I brushed them aside at the time. I told her she was safe, that she should just focus on her classes. I dropped her off at the curb, forcing a smile as she dragged her backpack toward the school doors, her shoulders hunched as if bracing for a storm only she could see. That evening, she came home pale and restless. "Dad," she said quietly as we ate dinner, "can I change schools?" I laughed, thinking she was exaggerating. "What?" "Emily, Ridgeway is one of the best schools in the district. You'll be fine." Her fork clattered onto her plate. "You don't understand. Something's wrong there." "Wrong how?" I asked, annoyed at my own confusion. She bit her lip, then shook her head. "Forget it." That was the first warning bell. The second came a week later, when Ms. Carter, her English teacher, pulled me aside during pickup. "Emily's been distracted," she said gently. "Her writing assignments are darker than usual. She keeps hinting at something, a secret." I frowned. "Like what?" Ms. Carter hesitated, clearly weighing how much she should reveal. One of her essays mentioned a boy bringing something dangerous to school. She insisted it was fictional, but she trailed off, worry etched in her face. "Mr. Ellis, the principal, told me to let it go. But as a teacher, I felt you should know." My stomach tightened, but I still clung to denial. Kids have imaginations. Emily loves writing stories. Yes, Miss Carter agreed, but her eyes told me she wasn't convinced. That night, I asked Emily directly, "What did you mean in your essay? About the dangerous thing?" She froze, her eyes wide, then forced a smile. "It's just a story, Dad. You know how I make stuff up." I wanted to push. I wanted to demand the truth. But the relief of her denial was easier to accept than the fear her words ignited. So I let it go. The third warning bell wasn't subtle. It blared like a siren, and still, no one acted. 2 weeks later, a lockdown drill was announced. Emily came home shaking, her face pale as paper. "I don't want to do those drills anymore," she whispered, burying her face in her arms. "They're just practice," I said, hugging her. "It's to keep you safe." Her voice muffled against my shirt. "But it's not practice. Not really. Everyone knows something's going to happen. We just don't say it out loud." Her words sent a chill through me, but I convinced myself she was being dramatic, feeding off rumors and social media. After all, kids her age could turn anything into a catastrophe in their minds. I told her again she was safe. But deep down, part of me knew she didn't believe it, and worse, I wasn't sure I did either. The warning bells had rung. Loud, clear, and undeniable. And yet every adult, me, the teachers, the principal, chose not to listen. Which is why, when the tragedy finally struck, it wasn't a surprise to Emily. It was a confirmation. She had tried to warn us. We just didn't hear her. After those warning bells, I should have acted. I should have pulled Emily out of Ridgeway immediately. But like so many parents, I convinced myself that the school knew best. That they had procedures, counselors, resources. That my fears were just paranoia. I couldn't have been more wrong. The pressure started showing in Emily first. She stopped sitting at the kitchen counter in the mornings, stopped humming to herself as she packed her bag. Instead, she dragged her feet, moving like she was heading into battle. Her appetite shrank, her laughter vanished, and at night, I'd hear her tossing in bed, whispering to herself. One Saturday, I found her journal left open on her desk. I know I shouldn't have read it, but something inside me told me I needed to. Scrawled across the page in uneven handwriting were the words, "If no one believes me, then maybe I should just stop talking. It doesn't matter anyway." My heart clenched. When I confronted her gently, she snapped the journal shut and shook her head. "Don't, Dad. You'll just tell me it's fine. You always do." Her words hit me like a knife. I tried to contact the school counselor, but the response I got was dismissive. "Middle school is tough for everyone. Emily is adjusting. Give her time." Adjusting. That was the same word the principal used when I asked about bullying. He brushed it off, saying, "Kids exaggerate. We handle these things quietly." But nothing was being handled. The kids in the east hallway still cornered her. She admitted once that one boy had shoved her into the lockers and whispered, "You'll be first." When I demanded the school investigate, they gave me a polite smile and told me they found no evidence. Meanwhile, Emily's isolation deepened. Her best friend Lily started avoiding her, pressured by Savannah, one of the popular girls, who mocked Emily's paranoia in front of everyone. At home, Emily began spending hours locked in her room, sketching dark drawings of empty classrooms, broken clocks, and doors with chains. I tried to encourage her to draw something brighter, but she shook her head. "This is what it feels like inside." The more she spoke, the more I realized she didn't trust anyone. Not me, not her teachers, not her friends. She was carrying the weight of something too heavy for her age, and the adults who should have lifted it ignored her. The worst moment came one night when I caught her staring at the TV during a news report about another school tragedy in a different state. She didn't cry, didn't ask questions. She just whispered, "It'll happen here too. No one will stop it." I tried to reassure her, but my words sounded hollow, even to me. Because by then, even I could feel the cracks widening. I drive past the school and notice the broken security cameras, the back door propped open with a rock, the groups of unsupervised kids milling around with hoodies pulled low. I mentioned it at a parent meeting, but the principal smiled thinly and said, "We're working on improvements." But nothing changed. The pressure on Emily grew unbearable, and with it, my isolation as a parent did too. Other parents told me I was overreacting, that Emily was too imaginative, that she'd grow out of it. Teachers stopped returning my emails. Even Cynthia, my girlfriend at the time, said I was coddling Emily, that I needed to toughen her up. It felt like screaming into a void. And through it all, Emily grew quieter, heavier, as if every day at Ridgeway added another stone to her shoulders. I kept telling myself I had time, that I could wait and watch, gather more proof, figure out what to do. But I didn't know that time was the one thing I was running out of. Because Emily wasn't just warning me anymore. She was begging me to act. And I didn't. Not yet. The revelation came like a lightning strike, sudden, blinding, and impossible to ignore. It was a Tuesday night when Emily finally broke. She came into the living room clutching her backpack like a shield. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed red, but there was a strange determination in her voice. "Dad," she whispered, "if I tell you something, will you promise not to just say I'm imagining it?" I sat up straighter. "I promise." She hesitated, then pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her bag. It was a note, messy handwriting scrawled across lined paper. "Friday. East hallway. He said he'll do it this time." My heart stopped. Emily, who wrote this? She swallowed hard. "I found it in my locker." "But Dad, it's not just a note. I've heard them talking. The boys in the hallway. They brag about bringing something. They laugh about how nobody checks their bags. One of them said he was serious this time. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. I told Ms. Carter. She said she'd report it. But nothing happened. They told her she was overreacting. And the principal, he just told me not to spread rumors. I stared at the note in my hand, my pulse thundering. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't paranoia. This was a warning. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my voice trembling. Because no one believes me, Emily whispered. Not even you. Her words cut deeper than any blade. That night, I barely slept. I paced the kitchen, staring at the note under the harsh light. Every instinct screamed at me to storm into Ridgeway and demand answers, but another voice whispered that they'd dismiss me again, just like before. The next morning, I went straight to the principal's office. I slapped the note down on his desk. This was in my daughter's locker. She says she's heard threats. What are you doing about it? Mr. Ellis barely glanced at it before sighing. Mr. Daniels, children exaggerate. They pick up things online. We can't chase down every rumor. This isn't a rumor, I snapped. It's a threat. Are you even checking bags? Are you even looking? His expression hardened. We can't invade students' privacy on baseless claims. Please trust that Ridgeway is safe. Safe. The word tasted like poison. I stormed out, shaking with rage. Emily was right. They weren't going to listen. That evening, I found another page tucked in Emily's notebook. It wasn't hers. It was written in the same messy scrawl as the first note. She talks too much. Maybe she'll be first. My blood ran cold. They knew Emily had spoken up. And now, they were targeting her. I realized, with a clarity that left me dizzy, that the adults who were supposed to protect her were not only blind but complicit in their silence. And that meant the responsibility fell on me. But what could I do? Pull her out of school with no proof? Go to the police with nothing but scraps of paper? Every option felt like a gamble. But one thing was certain. The tragedy Emily feared wasn't hypothetical. It was real, it was coming, and unless I acted, it would engulf her. That was the revelation. She hadn't been crying wolf. She had been holding the truth in her small, trembling hands all along. And I had wasted precious time doubting her. Once the truth settled in, I knew I couldn't sit back anymore. The school wasn't going to act. The principal had made that perfectly clear. If anyone was going to protect Emily, it had to be me. I started by collecting everything, every note Emily had found, every detail she remembered. I asked her to tell me everything she had overheard, no matter how small. She sat at the kitchen table with her knees pulled to her chest, whispering as if afraid the walls themselves might listen. They talk about the East Hallway, she said. Always the East Hallway. One of them said he could sneak it in because no one checks his bag. Another said Friday would be the day. Her voice shook. Dad, I'm scared. If they know I told, they'll come after me. I took her hand. No, Em. I won't let that happen. Not ever. That night, I typed everything into a document on my laptop. Dates, threats, names Emily thought she heard, and scanned copies of the notes. I sent the file to my email, to my work computer, to a flash drive. If the school wanted to bury this, I'd make sure they couldn't. The next morning, I went to the police. The officer at the front desk listened politely, glanced at the papers, then shook his head. Sir, we can't act on rumors. Unless there's concrete evidence, an actual P*N, credible witness testimony, it's just hearsay. I slammed my hand against the counter. What about when it's too late? When you're picking up bodies? My daughter has been threatened. Does that mean nothing? His expression softened, but his words didn't change. We'll make a note of your concerns, but there's nothing more we can do right now. That was when I realized Emily's fears were true. The adults in charge cared more about covering themselves than protecting children. So I decided to act differently. I called Ms. Carter, the only teacher who had ever shown genuine concern. When I explained, her voice trembled. Daniel, I believe Emily. I've noticed things too. Whispers. Glances. But every time I raise it, Ellis shuts me down. Then help me, I said. Help me stop this. Together, we devised a plan. She would discreetly gather whatever information she could at school, who lingered in the East Hallway, who whispered about Friday. Meanwhile, I'd monitor Emily's phone and social media for anything suspicious. The next 2 days were a blur of tension. I barely slept, barely ate, constantly refreshing feeds, searching for hints of what was coming. Emily clung to me at night, whispering, "Don't let them make me go back." Never, I promised. On Thursday evening, Ms. Carter called. Daniel. I overheard one of the boys. He said something about a bag in his locker. He was laughing. My stomach dropped. Which boy? She hesitated. I don't know for sure. But Daniel, it's real. Whatever Emily's been hearing, it's real. That was enough. I couldn't wait for permission. Friday morning, I kept Emily home. I didn't ask. I didn't negotiate. I told her she was sick, and I called in an absence. Relief washed over her face like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then I drove back to Ridgeway. I parked outside, my fists tight on the steering wheel, my phone ready to record. I watched as kids filed inside, backpacks bouncing. Every one of those bags could hold the threat my daughter had warned me about. And yet the security guard just waved them through, barely glancing at anyone. When the first period bell rang, I walked straight into the school. I found Mr. Ellis in the office and dropped the flash drive on his desk. "You've ignored this long enough," I said, my voice steady but boiling underneath. "If anything happens today, if one child gets hurt, this proves you knew. and I will take it to every news outlet, every lawyer, every parent in this town." His smug composure cracked. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "I'm not asking anymore. I'm warning you. If you don't act today, you'll be the one answering for it." I walked out before he could respond. My heart pounded, my body trembling, but I felt something new rising inside me, resolve. For the first time, I wasn't doubting Emily. I was fighting for her, and I would keep fighting until someone finally listened. Friday morning felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Every second ticked by heavier than the last, and I couldn't shake the sense that the world was holding its breath. I kept Emily home, refusing to let her anywhere near Ridgeway. She sat at the kitchen table with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her wide eyes darting to the clock every few minutes. "Dad," she whispered, "what if they don't believe you? What if it still happens?" I forced myself to smile, though my stomach churned. "Then we'll make them believe, one way or another." At 10:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Ms. Carter. Her voice was tight, urgent. "Daniel, it's happening." One of the boys was bragging in the hallway, showing something to his friends. I told Ellis. He brushed me off again. But I saw it. I saw the bag. I froze. "What's in the bag?" she whispered. "I don't know, but the way he handled it, God, Daniel, I think it's real." My blood went cold. "Get out of the hallway," I told her. "Get the kids away. I'm calling the police." I hung up and dialed 911, my words tumbling out so fast I barely breathed. "There's a credible threat at Ridgeway Middle School. A student has brought something dangerous on campus. I have notes, testimony, and a teacher who just confirmed seeing it. You need to get there now." For once, they didn't dismiss me. The dispatcher's tone sharpened, and she promised officers were en route. I called Ms. Carter back. She was whispering from inside her classroom, her voice shaking. "The boys are heading toward the east hallway. They're laughing. They don't know I saw." I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "Lock your door. Protect your kids. Help is coming." Minutes later, police cars screamed down the street. I watched from my kitchen window, heart hammering, as they converged on Ridgeway. Sirens wailed, lights flashing, shattering the illusion of safety the school had clung to for so long. News spread like wildfire. Parents flooded the parking lot, screaming their children's names. The school went into lockdown. And then, finally, the truth came out. Officers stormed the east hallway and found two boys with a duffel bag shoved into a locker. Inside were makeshift P***NS, stolen knives, and journals filled with plans. Chilling, detailed plans. They had written out targets, times, even cruel jokes about who would go first. Emily's name was on one of those pages. When I heard that, my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, gasping for breath, rage and terror flooding through me in equal measure. If I hadn't kept her home, if I hadn't pushed back, my daughter might have been the first name crossed off that list. The boys were arrested. The school tried to keep details quiet, issuing a bland statement about a security concern successfully handled. But the parents weren't blind. Whispers spread faster than officials could contain them. And then Ms. Carter leaked the truth. She shared the notes, the warnings, the fact that Emily had spoken up weeks before anyone acted. She told the PTA, the press, and every parent who would listen, this could have been prevented. We ignored the warning signs. We ignored a child. The district scrambled. The principal tried to save face, but it was too late. The lie of Ridgeway's safety had shattered. When I picked Emily up from Lily's house later that day, she burst into tears the moment she saw me. "You believed me," she sobbed into my chest. "Finally. You believed me." I held her tight, my own tears falling into her hair. "I should have believed you sooner. I'm sorry, Em. I'll never doubt you again." For the first time in weeks, I saw relief wash over her face. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. She had been right all along. And now the world knew it, too. The days after the police swarmed Ridgeway felt unreal, like living inside someone else's nightmare. Reporters camped outside the school, microphones shoved towards stunned parents. Social media exploded with hashtags, each one accusing the district of negligence. The phrase, "it never should have happened," became the headline everywhere I looked. But inside my home, the only thing that mattered was Emily. She clung to me more than ever, sleeping in my bed for the first time since she was a little girl. At night, she'd startle awake, whispering, "Did they let them out? Are they coming back?" I would hold her until she fell asleep again, whispering promises I had no choice but to keep. Therapists called, offering crisis counseling. The school district set up a support hotline. Parents gathered in angry meetings, demanding Ellis resign. Through it all, Emily sat quietly, sketching in her notebook, drawing pictures of locks, doors, and sirens. The images were dark, but they were also cathartic. One evening, she handed me a drawing of a girl holding a megaphone, shouting into a void. Beneath it, she'd written, "Believe us when we speak." I cried when I saw it. Because that was the core of it all. She had spoken, and none of us had listened soon enough. Not me. Not the teachers. Not the people who were supposed to protect her. And yet she hadn't stopped trying. Even when she felt invisible, she had kept shouting. The district tried to spin the story, insisting the system worked. But parents weren't buying it. Ms. Carter and I stood side by side at a school board meeting, the notes Emily had saved projected onto a screen for everyone to see. Gasps filled the room when the words, "She'll be first," appeared in black and white. The silence that followed was heavier than any speech. Ellis resigned the next day. The boys were transferred to juvenile detention, their parents weeping on the courthouse steps. I didn't feel pity, only a hollow ache that it had ever come this far. For Emily, healing was slower. The nightmares persisted, but slowly, she began to reclaim pieces of herself. Lily apologized for pulling away, and the two girls started rebuilding their friendship, one whispered sleepover at a time. Emily even returned to band practice, her clarinet squeaking out hesitant notes until laughter replaced fear. As for me, I carried the guilt like a second skin. Every time I looked at her, I remembered the times I'd brushed off her warnings, the moments I'd chosen denial over belief. But guilt alone wouldn't protect her, or anyone else. So I acted. I started a parents' coalition, demanding real safety reforms. Functioning cameras, secure doors, mental health resources, anonymous reporting systems. To my surprise, dozens joined. We weren't dismissed anymore. We were loud, organized, relentless. Emily, too, found her voice. At 13, she stood on a small stage at a community rally, her hands trembling as she held the microphone. "My name is Emily," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I told adults what was happening. I begged them to listen. They didn't. And it almost cost lives. Kids know things before adults do. Please, believe us." The crowd erupted in applause, some parents in tears. I watched her from the front row, pride swelling so fiercely it almost hurt. That was the moment I knew the tragedy hadn't broken her. It had made her stronger. Months later, Emily still carries scars. So do I. But we've turned them into armor, into action. The school is different now. Not perfect, but better. Safer. Because one little girl refused to be silenced. And me. I'll never again mistake silence for safety. Because safety isn't what adults declare in boardrooms or brochures. It's what we fight for every single day, by listening to the voices we once ignored. Especially the voices of children.